A heavy sky loomed over Riverside like a mourning shroud. Thick, leaden clouds pressed down on the hill where the old funeral home stood in silence, as if the heavens themselves had bowed in grief. Inside, a muted yellow-gray light filtered through stained glass windows, casting streaks of red and purple across the cold stone floor like unhealed wounds. At the center of the chapel, a mahogany casket rested in solemn stillness, draped perfectly with the national flag. Sheriff Elliot Granger, the man who had led this city for over 3 decades, was being laid to rest in a ceremony thick with sorrow. Mourners sat in rigid rows, heads bowed. Police uniforms lined the pews, medals gleamed faintly, and black armbands gripped every sleeve. It was a portrait of order that stifled even breath. Noah Whitaker sat in the front row. His dress uniform felt tighter than it should have, but not because of fabric. His eyes were locked on the casket. No tears, only a hollow space inside his chest, as if something essential had been pulled from him. Elliot wasn't just a superior officer. He had been the man who pulled Noah out of juvenile detention at 16, the first to teach him what honor meant, the only person who had never given up on him. Claire Granger Elliot's wife sat beside him, her delicate hand clutched tightly around a mourning scarf. Her face was pale, waxen. The lines around her eyes had deepened in just 3 days. Then, suddenly, a bark split the silence, sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. Noah turned sharply. Luke, the German shepherd, strained at his leash, body taut as a bow, ears pricked high, fur bristling along his spine. A low growl rumbled from deep in his chest, like an engine firing up in the dead of night. The neighbor walking him panicked, struggling to hold him back, but failed. The dog broke free, charging towards the casket. 2 officers reacted just in time, grabbing him mid-lunge. Luke paused for only a heartbeat before thrashing again, barking wildly, desperately, like his life depended on reaching that box of wood. A vase tipped over. White flowers scattered across the stone tiles. Claire stood up, hand over her mouth. Murmurs rose. Some guests began to rise, confused and alarmed. Deputy Lucas Darnell stormed toward the platform, his face flushed. "Get that dog out of here! This is a funeral, not a crime scene!" But Luke wouldn't stop. He leapt onto the dais, clawing at the silk cover draped over the casket. His barks turned into a relentless rhythm, not just panic. It was an alarm, warning, pleading, watchfulness. The pastor fell silent. Every mourner froze, witnessing something no one could explain. Noah stepped forward, eyes locked on Luke. He didn't shout, didn't push him away. Instead, he knelt and placed a hand gently on the dog's shoulder. Luke trembled violently, not from fear, but from emotion too vast to hold in. His eyes locked on the casket, unmoving, unshakable. There was no confusion, only instinct, urgency. "Stop," Noah said, loud and clear. "Open the casket, right now." The silence that followed stretched like centuries. Lucas spun around, stunned. "Are you out of your mind?" "I mean it." Noah stood up. "I worked on dozens of cases with Elliot, and with Luke. I know that look. He's trying to tell us something, and I won't ignore it." Claire stepped forward, her voice cracked, frail but steady. "Do as he says. I'm his wife. I have the right." The funeral director hesitated, then stepped up. His hands trembled as he reached for the latch. The sound of the lock clicking open lucid through the hall like a heartbeat breaking. Luke went still. No more barking, no more pulling. He lowered his body, eyes glued to the gap slowly widening before him. A chill slipped out from within. Beneath the layers of white silk, Elliot's body lay motionless. Then a flicker. a faint twitch of breath. A nurse screamed, "He has a pulse! He's alive!" The chapel erupted. Some shouted. An officer called for an ambulance. Claire collapsed onto a pew. Noah stood frozen, unsure if he was dreaming or awake. Luke now sat beside the casket. He wasn't barking, wasn't growling, just whimpering soft sounds like wind sighing through old wood. Each breath, halting and hoarse, was not pain, but release, like a child finding their parents after a nightmare. He lowered his head, curled against the base of the coffin, body trembling, breath quickened. A whimper, then silence, then again repeating like a desperate prayer no one could fully hear. Noah knelt once more, hand resting on Luke's head, as gentle as a thank you. And for the first time in nearly 20 years, tears fell from his eyes. "You didn't give up," he whispered. "You believed when the rest of us had stopped believing." In the distance, an ambulance siren began to wail. Rain tapped softly on the roof of the funeral home. A slow, quiet rain that washed away what had been hidden. And in a place meant for farewells to the dead, life had knocked at the door. A dog barked, and an entire town would soon awaken. The wail of the ambulance pierced through the rain, slicing the stunned silence like a blade. As the medics burst through the double doors, no one in the chapel, not the officers, the grieving family, not even the ones who had protested most could maintain the composed solemnity of minutes earlier. They stepped aside instinctively, clearing the way for the stretcher, as if afraid that touching this moment might make it vanish like a hallucination. Noah Whitaker stayed where he was, bent low beside Luke. The German shepherd remained planted at the base of the casket, still as a silent sentinel. His breaths were quick, but his eyes had shifted from chaos to calm, as if the most urgent mission had just been fulfilled. Somehow Elliot Granger was still alive. One of the nurses whispered something to her colleague as she leaned in to check his vitals. They moved quickly now, but with care peeling back the silk, checking monitors, taking his pulse. The room was so still, the only sound was the gentle tapping of rain against the eaves. Behind Noah, Claire Granger clutched his shoulder with one hand and her crumpled mourning cloth with the other. The tears had stopped, yet her eyes held a fragile awe, straining to balance between disbelief and the faintest thread of hope. Deputy Lucas Darnell took a slow step back. The fury etched on his face earlier was gone, replaced by something harder to name, as if reality itself had just struck him with undeniable force. A man thought dead was not. And a dog had known all along. Luke let out a soft whimper, a low, tender sound drenched in feeling. His large head nudged gently against the stretcher as the medics lifted Elliot onto it. Noah placed a hand on Luke's head to steady him. "He's in good hands now, buddy," he said quietly, voice trembling but firm. "Now it's our turn to find out what really happened." The medics wheeled the stretcher out of the chapel, flanked by 2 officers. Mourners parted, some bowing their heads in prayer, others simply gasping like they had just woken from a heavy dream. Claire followed behind, never looking back. Noah stood up. Luke followed at his heel like a shadow. Just before exiting the room, Noah turned to Lucas Darnell. "If there's nothing to hide, I trust you'll have no objection to a full review of the death report." Lucas tightened his jaw, fingers gripping the brim of his cap. "I'll do what's necessary," he replied, voice dry as paper. Noah didn't answer. He stepped into the open, where the rain had grown heavier. Luke shook water from his back and stayed close. Inside Noah, something had awakened. A man once lost had returned, and with him, a truth too sharp to ignore. No one yet understood how Elliot Granger had survived. But Noah knew. This couldn't be random. This wasn't a simple misdiagnosis. Not with Elliot, the man who walked every morning and once joked, Death better ask permission before coming for me. The ambulance pulled away from the funeral home, red lights flashing through the mist. Noah and Luke paused under the awning. He reached down and ran a trembling hand along Luke's back. "We're not done," he murmured. "This is only the beginning." Then, with the old instincts of a man who'd investigated hundreds of cases, Noah pulled a weathered notepad from his coat pocket. His pen moved fast, leaving ink trails across the damp paper, capturing everything. Names, times, reactions, the anxious flicker in Lucas's eyes, the strange delay in calling the coroner. These details would not be lost in the flood of emotions. Luke sat beside him, eyes fixed on the direction the ambulance had gone. The sky was a dull, leaden gray, but in Luke's gaze there was clarity, a silent reminder that unanswered questions would not remain buried. Noah closed the notebook, gripping it tightly. A gust of wind swept beneath the awning sharp, cold. But beside him stood Luke, the warmth of his fur, his steady breath, his loyal presence. In that moment, Noah didn't feel alone. No one knew what lay ahead. But Noah was certain of one thing. If Luke had barked, it had never been random. That was the first sign, and more would follow. "Let's go, Luke," he said. "We've got a truth to uncover." Rain continued to fall as Noah Whitaker and Luke stepped away from the funeral home's awning toward the gray sedan parked a few meters away. Luke climbed into the back seat without hesitation. His spot, the one he'd occupied through countless shifts with Elliot. Noah started the engine, the windshield wipers scraping away the rain in slow, rhythmic sweeps, like trying to clear the fog clouding his thoughts. He didn't drive to the hospital right away. His instincts told him he needed something else first. A clear sign that his suspicions weren't just grief playing tricks on his mind. Without it, he would be just another old man chasing shadows. The car pulled up in front of the Riverside Police Department, a moss-covered stone building Noah had called home for over 2 decades. He wrapped his raincoat around Luke and headed inside. A few colleagues glanced at him with a mix of doubt and pity. They'd heard who hadn't. The barking, the coffin, Elliot's pulse. In one rainy afternoon, the entire city had shifted. Noah didn't stop. He made his way straight to the records room where forensic reports and internal memos were stored. Luke followed closely. The room was dim and cold, filled with the smell of old paper and dried ink. Noah sifted through the filing boxes until he found the folder labeled Granger, Elliot Case ID 718-22. He opened it. Death certificate signed by a nurse, no coroner verification. Time of death, 14/17. Incident report, no signs of trauma, no autopsy requested per family request. Final approval, Lucas Darnell. Noah's hands clenched. He remembered clearly Claire had wept like rain, but not once had she requested to skip the autopsy. And Elliot? A man like him, passing without a single forensic exam, no EKG, no emergency treatment log, everything based on one nurse's word? Luke whimpered softly. Noah looked up. The dog was standing near a different filing cabinet, tail swaying slowly, ears alert. He stared at Noah, urging him. "What is it?" Noah muttered, walking over. This cabinet held personnel deployment records. He pulled a drawer. Inside were files from closed-door meetings over the past 3 months. One memo caught his eye. Internal meeting. July 5th, temporary handling of Eastbridge case. Eastbridge, the very case Elliot had been investigating before his death. A tangled drug network creeping into city offices, repeatedly delayed due to lack of evidence. Noah flipped through the pages. Lucas's signature. An order to temporarily close the file. But no official explanation. A handwritten note scrawled in the margin struck him. Granger objects. Requested reopening. Noah swallowed hard. His mind raced faster than the rain pelting the window. "Elliot found something," he whispered, "and someone wanted him silenced." Luke nudged his leg. Noah crouched and stroked his head gently. "You were the only one who stayed," he murmured. "You saved him once. Maybe now it's my turn." He rose, stuffed the file into his bag, and hurried out. His next stop wasn't the hospital. It was Elliot's house. The rain still fell when he arrived. Claire was home, still dressed in mourning, hands trembling as she opened the door. She saw Luke first, then Noah, her eyes searching for something to believe in, but almost too tired to try. "Claire," Noah said softly, "I need to check Elliot's office. I think he hid something important there." She hesitated, then nodded. "Upstairs. But he locked the desk drawer with a personal code. I don't know." "I've got a feeling Luke might," Noah replied with a faint smile, ascending the stairs. Luke followed, confident. The study was dusty, books left open, a coffee cup long dried. On the desk, a photo frame. Elliot and Luke in uniform, standing outside a training center. Noah looked at the picture, then at Luke. "You remember?" Luke whimpered softly. He stepped forward, touched his nose to the desk, then circled once and stopped at the right-hand drawer. Noah knelt. A numeric keypad. "4 digits, he murmured. "Claire's birthday? Badge number?" Luke let out a short bark, as if to say no. "Not that?" Then it clicked. Elliot had once said, "If I ever have to lock something away, I'll use the day I met Luke." Noah typed, 0611. Click. The drawer sprang open. Inside was a thick file marked in red. East Bridge Supplemental Version Top Secret. And a silver USB drive. Noah turned to Luke. "We've got it," he whispered. Outside, the rain had begun to fade. Something else was rising anger and purpose, like fire under a sealed pot. He didn't know what the USB contained, but he knew one thing. This wasn't an accident, not a mistake. Someone had tried to kill Elliot Granger, and they had almost succeeded. Night had fallen over Riverside, draping the city in damp fog and the dim yellow glow of the hospital's lights. On the top floor, where the ICU hummed with quiet urgency, lights stayed on like a lone lighthouse in a sea of dark. Noah Whitaker stepped into the corridor with Luke at his side. In his hand was the leather case containing the confidential file and silver USB drive they had discovered in Elliot's study. His eyes were sharp now, no longer dazed like he had been after the funeral. Luke moved in sync beside him, silent but alert. The way he observed everything steady, composed, it was as if even he knew this was no longer just about finding a man. It was about uncovering the truth. Dr. Evelyn Miller, the county's forensic pathologist, stood at the far end of the hallway. She was the only person Noah trusted right now, and the only one who had ever dared question the heart attack that supposedly laid Elliot to rest. "You're late," Evelyn said gently, not scolding, just tired. "Not later than the truth," Noah replied, placing the case on her small desk. He pulled out the USB and the thick folder, sliding them toward her. "These. Elliot hid them well. I haven't looked inside yet. But I think—" He knew he was being watched. Evelyn opened the file. Her eyes scanned each page like someone reading the journal of a soul nearly buried alive. "This is internal contact lists?" She frowned. "Wire transfers? Maps of prescription drug routes in Eastbridge?" Noah nodded. "Lucas Darnell's signature is in there, and I believe the USB has even more." Evelyn plugged the USB into her laptop. The screen lit up. One file, titled, "If I Don't Wake Up." They said nothing, and opened it. Inside was a voice recording Elliot's voice, low and slightly hoarse, like he'd recorded it hastily on a sleepless night. "I believe I'm being watched," Elliot said. "I can't say who in that room is still clean, but if I vanish suddenly, it won't be my heart." Luke lifted his head, his ears angled towards the laptop, head tilting ever so slightly. Noah glanced over and the dog seemed to recognize the voice. "They think I'm old, tired, easy to ignore, but I've smelled rot inside the very machine I've kept running. And if I'm right, then I beg the one listening to this, don't trust easily. Don't conclude quickly, and don't overlook my dog. He'll know." Evelyn turned to Noah. Her gaze no longer held the cool professionalism of a doctor. It was a mixture of fear and fierce loyalty, forged in fire. "I need his blood," she said. "I need to recheck all his tissue samples, and I want to reopen the original forensics report." "You have the authority," Noah replied. "No," she shook her head. "I need a formal trigger, a clear sign." Noah looked at Luke. The dog walked forward and stood beside the hospital bed, where Elliot lay unconscious, still wired up to IVs and oxygen. Luke didn't howl, didn't bark. He simply laid his head across Elliot's chest, eyes closed. A long moment passed. Then Elliot twitched, barely just a small movement in his fingertips, but enough to make the monitor spike. Luke lifted his head and let out the faintest sound, something between a whisper and a whine. Evelyn rushed over, checking the monitor. "Neurological response," she whispered. "Not reflex. He's responding." Noah touched his friend's forehead. "Hang in there, Elliot. We're trying to bring you home." Luke stepped back, standing close to Noah. Evelyn's eyes remained locked on the screen, searching through lines of electrical signals for a soul that hadn't let go. "Thank you," she said. "Not just for bringing the file, but for not giving up." Noah rested a hand on Luke's head. "I wasn't the first to hold on. He was." Evelyn smiled softly at a fragile, genuine curve of the lips. "I used to think reports about dogs sensing human emotions were exaggerated, but after today, I'm not so sure." Noah said nothing. He knew Luke wasn't just a service dog. He was a witness, a warning bell, the last open eye in a system long asleep. Down the hall, the hospital PA crackled, signaling the next shift change. But in this room balanced between life and death by a breath, something had just reconnected. Not just because of evidence, not just suspicion, but because of belief in a man and in a dog still intact, despite everything. Noah looked again at the file. "If we do this, Evelyn, we do it right. No leaks. No one knows until we have real proof." "Agreed," she nodded. "I'll start the tests once the night shift clears out. I know what I'm stepping into, and I have no regrets." He nodded. Luke let out a soft groan and laid down at Noah's feet, resting his head gently on the man's boot. And the truth had begun to crack open. As night fell deeper over Riverside, darkness didn't just blanket the city, it crept into the hushed hospital corridors. Inside room 412, where the only light came from the soft glow of the vital signs monitor, Elliot Granger remained motionless. Beside his bed, Luke stood watch, not sleeping, not blinking, as if closing his eyes for even a second might let the world slip off course once more. Noah Whitaker sat against the wall, eyes half open, one hand resting gently on Luke's back, the only anchor between sleep and vigilance. His mind kept replaying everything. The USB, the recording, Elliot poisoned, Lucas Darnell's shadowy involvement. Pieces of a puzzle scattered, waiting for someone clear-eyed enough to connect them. A soft vibration broke the silence. A message lit up Noah's phone. "We need to talk. Meet me in parking level B2. Come alone." No name, no number. Just a notification from an anonymous app. Noah glanced at his watch. 2:04 a.m. He didn't need long to understand what this was and who might be testing him. But he also knew that refusing was the same as surrendering. He stood. Luke rose with him, alert. "Not this time," Noah whispered, kneeling to tap his nose. "Stay with Elliot. Watch him. If anything feels wrong, howl, no matter how small." Luke didn't move, but his eyes, deep and glowing like embers, made Noah feel, once again, that he wasn't alone. Parking level B2 was nearly deserted, just the flicker of fluorescent lights and the distant drip of water. A black SUV sat tucked in the shadows, its interior light glowing faintly. Noah approached, hand never straying far from the pistol tucked into his coat. The door opened. Inside sat a woman. Her face is achingly familiar. "Linda," he breathed, barely believing it. Linda Harrison Clare's younger sister, who had vanished without a word after the funeral. "We don't have much time," Linda said, voice trembling. "I don't know when they'll find me." "They?" Noah narrowed his eyes. "Lucas, and whoever's behind him. I know you think I'm guilty, and I stayed silent for too long, but I won't let Elliot die. Not again." Noah didn't speak. He waited. Linda pulled out a folder, her hands shaking as she handed it over. "These are copies of calls, emails, wire transfers I found in Lucas's internal account. He got sloppy, or thought no one would dare look." Noah flipped through. Codename: Kingfisher. Operation: Clean Sweep. Recipients: judges, political advisors, and someone inside the city cabinet. "This could bring the whole system down," he murmured. "They won't let you live long enough to expose it," Linda replied. "And I don't know how long before they find me. Do the right thing. Elliot believed in you. So do I." She opened the car door and stepped into the night, vanishing into the dark. Noah stood still a moment longer, then gripped the folder tighter and headed back to the elevator. But the moment the ICU doors slid open, he sensed something was wrong. No steady beeping, no antiseptic scent, no Luke. "Luke!" he called out, heart seizing. No response. He rushed into the room. The bed is empty, 4 lines on the floor, a breathing tube half pulled. No Luke. "Luke!" he yelled, sprinting down the corridor. A nurse froze as he shoved open the emergency wing doors. He was transferred. A team came in. They said it was ordered." "Ordered by who?" "Deputy Chief of Medicine. I couldn't verify." Noah bolted, heart pounding. He dialed Evelyn. "No one authorized the transfer?" she screamed through the phone. "I'm in the lab right now. What is—" A howl tore through the building. Luke's voice, raw, unmistakable. It rang like an alarm, slicing through walls and silence. Noah chased the sound, running harder than he had in years. Down 3 halls, down the stairwell, through narrow passages. And then he saw it. Luke stood between Elliot, unconscious on a stretcher, and 2 men in medical scrubs, syringes in hand. "Step aside," one barked. But Luke growled, unmoving. Noah drew his gun. "Don't move." The 2 froze. Just a moment, then dropped the stretcher and ran. Noah didn't chase. He dropped to Elliot's side, checking his pulse. Still there. He knelt beside Luke. "You did good," he whispered. Luke painted, body trembling from the adrenaline. But his eyes are unwavering, still protecting. Moments later, security rushed in, along with Evelyn and another doctor. Elliot was returned safely to the ICU. "There's someone inside the hospital helping them," Evelyn said. "We can't trust anyone." Noah just nodded. He ran a hand over Luke's head, then looked at Evelyn. "I want this dog protected like Elliot himself, and I I need a secure place to break down everything Linda gave me." Evelyn looked from him to Luke. "You won't do it alone." Noah sat in the hallway. Luke curled beside him, head resting on his leg. Under the dim hallway light, they said nothing. But they understood. The danger was close now, and this time, Luke had felt it, before any human could. The first morning after the chaos of the night before. The sky over Riverside wore a pale white veil. The rain had stopped, but no one inside the hospital felt the weather had settled. In a small, hidden room on the 3rd floor, known only to a few, Dr. Evelyn Miller sat before an old laptop, its keyboard worn, but the data inside anything but old. Noah Whitaker stood behind her, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the screen. Luke lay at his feet, ears perked, eyes occasionally glancing toward the door. He hadn't left Noah's side since the night before, not even when Noah took a quick shower in the doctor's locker room, or when Evelyn made coffee with trembling hands. The USB Linda had passed on had been cloned into an isolated drive. Evelyn opened each file, logging and labeling everything. No one spoke in a silence thick with breathless focus. "I think these are encrypted," Evelyn said. "We'll need specialized decryption software." "I know someone," Noah replied. "A former IT agent in Chicago. I helped him with a money laundering case years back. If anyone can crack this without leaving a trace, it's him." "We only get one shot," Evelyn said, looking him square in the eyes. "If they find out we have this—" Noah nodded. He reached down, gently resting his hand on Luke. "We're not going anywhere. Not until we know Elliot's safe, and what's inside this is enough to make them never try again." A while later, they managed to open the first 2 folders. Images appeared, bank ledgers, scanned printed documents, a few audio recordings. Lucas's name appeared more than once, but he wasn't alone. "This name—" Evelyn stopped, pointing at a line. "B.R. Hastings, Special Budget Unapproved Disbursement." Noah froze. "Brandon Hastings? The current mayor?" Evelyn nodded. "Looks like Elliot had evidence not just against Lucas, but the highest levels of city leadership. Hastings created a secret fund diverting healthcare relief money into shell organizations." Noah paced the room, every step dragging old trust through new mud. He'd believed in the system once, believed the rot was isolated. But what he saw now was metastasis. Luke whimpered softly, not from hunger or exhaustion, but because he sensed the rising tension. He stood and walked to Evelyn, sniffing cautiously around her seat. "He's not a fan of computers," Evelyn said with a faint smile, "but I trust he'll detect danger before I do." A knock at the door made all 3 freeze. "Dr. Miller?" a nurse's voice called. "Someone asking for you says they're the family of the Granger patient." Evelyn glanced at Noah. He nodded. "Ask them to wait in the hallway. I'm doing blood work." When the footsteps faded, Evelyn shut the laptop, slipped the USB into her coat's inner pocket, and motioned for Noah and Luke to follow. They slipped down a side corridor into an old pharmacy storage room, a place few visited. "I don't believe any family would be looking for me at 6 in the morning, Evelyn whispered. "They know we're holding something." Noah pulled out his phone and dialed quickly. "Mike, it's me. Need a rush to decrypt. Data tied to a government-level corruption network. I'll send the file in 10, but first I need to secure the people and the dog." Luke sniffed the air, ears snapping up. "I don't like that look," Evelyn murmured. "He senses something," Noah said. "Someone's getting close." Soon, footsteps pounded in the hallway outside. Not nurses. Heavy, deliberate steps, the kind made by tactical boots. "Into the archive room," Noah ordered, ushering Evelyn in first. He signaled Luke to block the door. A door creaked open down the hall. Someone entered the room Evelyn had just vacated. Noah quietly drew his gun. He didn't know if they'd come in here, but Luke, standing still, eyes locked on the door, told him the danger was real. A loud thump. Someone kicked a chair. A man's voice muttered, "Nobody in here. Try the other side." Footsteps faded. Luke's shoulders relaxed slightly, but his eyes never left the door. Evelyn sank to the floor. "I never thought it would be like this." "Elliot did," Noah said, "and he prepared, even when no one believed him." "Well, I believe now." Evelyn looked at Luke. "I owe him, and this dog too." Luke said nothing, but his eyes glowed with quiet resolve. As the hallway settled into silence, Noah gave Evelyn a nod. "Time to send the files, and get ready to strike back." While Evelyn uploaded the encrypted data to the external expert, Noah sat down beside Luke. His hand moved slowly along the dog's back, grounding himself. "We've come this far," he whispered. "And you're still here." Luke licked his hand once, then rested his head against Noah's shoulder in reply. Outside the window, morning began to break. But its light could not chase away all the darkness, because while they decoded secrets, the secrets were already hunting them. And in the heart of that storm, Luke, a dog with no voice, had become the most trusted voice in a world drowning in lies. Midday sunlight returned to Riverside after days of brooding gray rain. But the brightness outside did little to ease the tension building on the third floor of the hospital. The door to the archive room was now locked tight, yet Noah Whitaker knew the quiet wouldn't last. He stood at a narrow window, watching police cruisers come and go in the lot below. No sirens, no official announcements, but he could feel the net was tightening. And this time, the target was him. Behind him, Luke moved with measured steps, tail lowered. Not in fear, but in awareness. His eyes tracked Noah's every motion, as if trying to understand what no words could explain. Dr. Evelyn Miller entered through the side corridor. She no longer wore her white coat, but a plain gray jacket, hair tied back, her gaze sharp with resolve. "We have to leave," she said immediately. "I just heard from the head nurse. Lucas issued an internal bulletin claiming you're obstructing the investigation and carrying unlawful evidence. An internal warrant will be live within 2 hours." Noah nodded. "Is the USB out?" "It's in Mike's hands in Chicago, but he needs time to crack the final layer." "Then we need to survive longer than that." Evelyn opened a backpack, handed Noah a set of patient scrubs, sunglasses, and a fake ID badge. "You'll be a hospital infection control officer taking the service elevator. I'll trigger a false code red to distract security. Luke goes with you. I'll meet you after wiping the surveillance." Noah placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you. Not everyone chooses truth over safety." "Not everyone gets their conscience awakened by a dog," she said, offering a weary smile at Luke. 12 minutes later, an emergency tone rang out from the inpatient wing. In the service corridor, Noah moved quickly with Luke beside him. They disappeared into the narrow shadows of the side hall, a place filled only with the scent of metal, disinfectant, and the hum of exhaust fans. They reached the eastern basement garage. A plain ambulance van waited. The door swung open. Noah and Luke slipped inside. The vehicle pulled away. Noah sat by the window, eyes on every turn behind them. Luke sat opposite, his gaze fixed forward through the windshield, his body coiled like a drawn wire, always ready. "We need a place," Noah said, low and steady. "Somewhere no one would think to look." He remembered Elliot's old log cabin in the northern woods once used to train Luke after his rescue. No internet, no city power grid. Only 3 people had ever been there: Elliot, Claire, and himself. The drive took 2 hours. They paused at a rural gas station. Noah grabbed canned food, extra batteries, and a bottle of spring water for Luke. When he returned, he saw Luke sitting still in the front seat. But his eyes locked on a silver sedan that had just parked across. Noah followed the gaze of a man in a black jacket and baseball cap who was pretending to study a map while stealing glances at the van. Noah said nothing. He slid into the driver's seat and signaled Luke to lie low in the back. He started the engine and pulled away, turning out of the lot. The sedan pulled out, too. "They've got a tracker," he muttered, stepping hard on the gas. Luke gave a sharp, low howl his warning. Noah didn't head straight north. He turned down side roads, cut through long-abandoned farmland. 40 minutes later, certain they'd shaken the tail, he pulled into a small rest stop nestled in the woods. Luke jumped down, silently scanned the forest edge, then nuzzled Noah's hand. The signal was clear and safe. Noah crouched beside him, exhaling. "You just saved me again, Luke." They reached Elliot's cabin at 5:17 p.m. The place looked forgotten by time dust coated the wood floors, dry leaves piled on the porch. But signs of life remained inside. A photo of Elliot and Luke above the fireplace, a worn leather notebook resting on the table. Noah lit an oil lamp, sparked the fireplace, and set his laptop on the table. No satellite signal. But the hard drive holding Linda's copied data was intact. While Noah examined the files, Luke moved through the cabin like a silent guardian. Every rustle of forest wind made his ears twitch. Every sigh from Noah drew him near, resting his head on Noah's knee. "I don't know how this ends," Noah whispered, "but I know I couldn't get here without you." Luke didn't respond. He didn't need to. The way he leaned in and lay at Noah's feet said more than words could. Night fell. The forest wind howled through the cracks. But inside that cabin, warmed by the soft crackle of firelight, 2 souls remained. One man, one dog standing quietly against a storm, eager to erase them. And that night, to the sound of wind and ember, Noah began writing everything from the beginning, so that if tomorrow he wasn't alive to tell it, Luke would still remember it all. Dawn crept slowly across the old industrial zone south of Riverside. Sunlight spilled over rusted rooftops and cast fractured shadows against brick walls stained by a past too stubborn to fade. Cargo Station 17 sat silent among the deserted buildings, too quiet for comfort. Noah Whitaker parked at the edge of an overgrown lot, about 50 meters from the warehouse. He killed the engine, checked the pistol in his coat, then looked back at Luke standing in the back seat, eyes locked on the warehouse ahead. "No security cams, no guards, no lights. But you see it too, don't you?" Noah whispered. Luke let out a low, uncertain whine, not a confirmation, but a warning. They crossed the field, boots crunching through dry leaves and scattered trash. Luke led the way, careful, sniffing each shift of wind. At the iron gate, he paused. 1 beat, 2, then looked back at Noah. His eyes said it plainly. "Something's wrong." Noah nodded, tightened his grip on the sling bag, and crouched low, peering through a gap in the corrugated metal. The inside was empty. Just a few old crates, a dust-covered forklift, and dull light seeping through cracked windows. Too empty. Too perfect. "Trap," he muttered. Luke gave a soft whine, then snapped his head left. At that same moment, a faint click came from behind them, the sound of a safety catch releasing. "Down!" Noah yelled. They dove behind a row of crates just as gunfire split the air. Bullets sliced through the silence, slamming into the brick walls, sending dust flying. Luke pressed against Noah, shielding him, eyes locked on the origin of the shots. "They've got shooters behind us," Noah hissed. "At least 2. He peeked out and caught a glimpse of a shadow on top of a shipping container. Noah fired. A cry rang out. Not fatal, but it would throw them off. Luke let out a loud howl, not a warning, a signal. Seconds later, another man appeared through a side entrance, holding an M9. He had barely raised it when Luke launched forward a streak of gray muscle and fury. The growl tore through the air. His paws struck sparks from the concrete. The man didn't react fast enough. Luke clamped onto his arm, dragging him down. Noah rushed forward, kicked the weapon away. Luke didn't let go, teeth locked, but eyes trained on the rear door. "More coming?" Noah asked, hand resting on Luke's back. Footsteps looked down the corridor. "They're coming in force," he said. "Move!" They sprinted through the sorting area, looped to the west exit. A service tunnel to the adjacent warehouse still stood open during a lucky break. Luke dashed ahead, fast but controlled. At each turn, he paused just long enough to signal the path was still clear. At the tunnel's far end, sunlight blinded Noah for a second. As his vision adjusted, he spotted a cracked metal door, ajar. No movement, but something strange. A wooden crate, knocked over, loose restraints on the floor. Nearby, a used stun gun. "They held someone here," Noah murmured. "Maybe a witness." Luke sniffed the floor, nose twitching. Then he whined. He found something. A worn blue cloth, stained with dried blood. Noah picked it up. "They brought someone here, then pulled out. They knew someone would come. Probably me." A police siren wailed in the distance. Not a chase, just one short burst. Then silence. "They're using internal units to clean up," he said, erasing evidence like it never happened. Luke turned his head, a quick glance but full of meaning. "Got it," Noah nodded. "They still have people in the department, and they know where I am." No hesitation. Man and dog took the forest trail back to the vehicle. When they arrived, a black SUV sat parked 100 meters away. Empty. No driver. Noah didn't approach. He got in. Luke followed. They drove off the main road. Neither spoke on the way back. They didn't need to. The ambush proved one thing. The network wasn't just theory. It was alive. And now it was fighting back. At the cabin, Elliot was awake, propped on pillows, eyes weary but sharper than the day before. "They came, didn't they?" he asked softly. "They did," Noah replied, "and we barely made it." Luke walked in, headed straight to the bed. Elliot reached out. Luke rested his head there like he used to. "They ambushed us, but left traces. Someone was held at that cargo station, possibly a witness." "Then we find them before the other side does," Elliot said. Noah nodded. "And I believe only Luke is fast enough to track what they left behind." Luke lifted his head. His eyes lit with more than firelight, with understanding. With purpose. This time it wasn't just about protection. It was a hunt. Early morning light broke through dew-covered trees, casting a pale glow over the faded blue cloth still resting on the wooden table inside the cabin. Luke had stayed next to it all night, occasionally lifting his head to sniff it again, as if afraid the scent would vanish. Noah entered the room, coffee cup in hand, his eyes tired and red from lack of sleep. "Are you ready?" he asked. Luke didn't whine, didn't wag his tail. He simply stood, nose pressed once more to the cloth, then walked straight to the door like he already knew where they were going. They passed through the forest's edge, following a worn path that led west. Luke didn't run. He moved with steady, deliberate steps, pausing now and then to test the air, then continuing forward. Noah followed close behind, hand resting on the pistol at his side, not to threaten, but to remind himself this was more than just a search. By midday, Luke led him to an abandoned ranger station. The structure sagged, its wood rotting and roof partially collapsed. Old blood stained the steps. Luke stopped at the entrance, gave a low growl, then stepped forward slowly. Noah scanned the area, then pushed open the door. Inside, dim light revealed a figure curled in the corner. His arm was wounded, clothes torn, eyes half open with guarded awareness. The man looked up as Luke entered. "Whitaker?" the voice rasped. Noah froze. "Mike Harris?" Mike, the former IT agent Noah had asked to decrypt the USB, now lay before him, thin, bruised, barely hanging on with a few empty water bottles nearby. Luke stepped closer, sniffed gently, then lay down. A silent gesture that said, this man, though weak, was no threat. "They found me before I could finish the transfer," Mike gasped. "I hid the backup USB inside a medical syringe. They didn't check it, but I got hurt running from the station." Noah knelt beside him, handing him a water bottle. "Who brought you here?" "No one. I knew the old path from when Elliot used to manage Eastbridge. I figured this was the one place they wouldn't look." Luke stood, padded to the corner of the shack, and scratched at the dirt. Noah moved to dig. A small box lay hidden. Inside, just as Mike said, was a hollowed-out syringe containing a thin plastic sheath, and within it, a USB drive. "What's on it?" Noah asked. "Fake drug distribution routes, shipment networks, accounts tied to Lucas and someone codenamed Sentinel. High up. Elliot once suspected the deputy mayor." Noah's fists tightened. "Can you walk?" "With a ride. I can't go through the main roads." "We'll take the forest trail. Luke will lead." On the way back, Luke stayed between the two men, ears tuned to the slightest sound. As they crossed a shallow stream, Luke stopped, letting out a soft whine. "What is it?" Noah asked. Luke looked up the slope, a single fresh boot print in the mud, not theirs. "Someone else is nearby," Mike said quietly. Noah turned to Luke. "Take us around." They veered off the path, cutting through pine groves and climbing low ridges. As dusk settled, they finally reached the cabin. Elliot was waiting by the fire. When he saw Mike enter, he gave a small nod. "I had faith you'd keep your promise." Mike offered a tired smile. "And I knew Luke was the only one who could find me." Noah set the USB on the table. "Tonight, we decrypt the rest. And if Elliot's right, then Sentinel could be the final blow to this whole network." Luke curled up beside Noah's feet, eyes fixed on the flickering flames. He didn't bark, didn't growl, but Noah knew this story wasn't over yet. The cabin in the woods had become a temporary command post for a truth waiting to be exposed. From dawn until dusk, Elliot, Noah, Evelyn, and Mike worked without pause. Using Elliot's old laptop, they continued decrypting the USB Mike had smuggled out of the detention site. Luke lay by the window, eyes always trained on the forest, ears upright and alert, as if he knew danger wouldn't come from the screen, but from somewhere no one would expect. "Here," Evelyn whispered, pointing to a line on the screen. "Sentinel." Noah stepped closer. Next to the code name was a string of encrypted accounts and 3 appointment logs, times, coordinates, and the tag, S-17. "Cargo Station 17, Elliot said quietly. "That's where they staged it all." "Sentinel is the final link," Noah nodded. "If we expose him, the whole network collapses." They made a plan. Tomorrow morning, the evidence would be sent to 3 major news outlets and simultaneously handed to the FBI through an off-the-record channel. Evelyn would deliver a hard copy. Mike would handle remote encryption and geotagging. Outside, night crept in. The wind whispered through the trees, a reminder that no matter how well laid, every plan had its variables. Noah was stoking the fire when Luke suddenly howled, not loud, but long and persistent. Everyone froze. "Someone's near the cabin," Elliot said instantly. "Luke doesn't sound like that for deer." Noah shut off the lights, signaled for silence. He and Luke slipped onto the porch. Nothing but shadows. But Luke didn't move, his gaze locked on the darkness at the forest's edge, like something had just stirred. A crash came from the back. "Inside!" Noah hissed. "They're here!" A window shattered, a bullet ripped through the kitchen wall. Evelyn pulled Mike behind the bookshelf. Elliot rolled to the floor, grabbing a pistol from beneath the table. Noah shoved Luke towards the bedroom, meaning to lock him inside. But Luke spun around and growled, not defiantly, but insistent. He was staying. He was fighting. "You know what you're doing," Noah whispered. "All right, stay close." Footsteps thudded in the back corridor. A shadow rose behind the broken window. Noah fired. The intruder dropped. Luke bolted forward, shielding Mike, who hadn't fully recovered. Another attacker rounded the kitchen, blade drawn. Luke roared, leaping with brutal precision, clamping down on the man's wrist. The scream, Luki'd. The man slashed wildly and missed. Mike rolled aside. Noah fired another threat down. Silence hung for 2 heartbeats. Then a siren in the distance, not police, a retreat signal. "They know they failed," Elliot muttered, steadying Luke, who was panting hard. "But they won't stop." The cabin was wrecked. Gunpowder still lingered in the air. Evelyn dressed a cut on Mike's arm, while Noah knelt beside Luke. "You saved someone again," he whispered. "This time, the one who carries the truth." Luke lay still, breathing heavily, eyes closed, but ears still sharp. That night, the 4 of them slept in a protective circle. Luke at the center, the one who fought, the one who shielded. He didn't need praise. He didn't want comfort. His presence alone was the reason it all still stood. At first light, Elliot looked at Luke and murmured, "Not everyone has a friend like you." Noah leaned against the wall, hand resting gently on the dog's back. "Not everyone needs a friend like this unless they've lost faith, and earned it back through a single howl." The sky above the pine forest was still dark, but the horizon shimmered with a faint shade of blue, the fragile light of dawn. Inside the old wooden cabin, 4 people and 1 dog remained wide awake. They had just survived a midnight assault. And now they were about to confront the man who had orchestrated it all. Noah stood at the window, eyes fixed on the forest trail. Luke sat beside him, head held high, quiet as a soldier waiting for a signal. Behind them, Mike worked through the last of the decrypted files. The final layer of data from the USB had revealed more than just names. There were images, personal records, financial accounts, and communication logs. And in the center of the screen was a familiar face, Deputy Mayor Warren Kessler, a man who had once joined Elliot in anti-drug campaigns. "Sentinel," Evelyn whispered. "It's him." Elliot nodded slowly. "I always suspected, but I never had proof. Not until Linda sent this, and nearly died for it." Noah turned, voice steady. "We can't transmit this online. They'll intercept it. We have to hand-deliver it to the FBI, someone clean, outside Kessler's reach." "We only get 1 shot," Mike said. "If the route leaks..." Noah looked at Luke. "Then we let him choose the path." Luke looked up. Meeting Noah's eyes, he let out a quiet sound, not quite a yes, but a clear understanding. Within 30 minutes, they left the cabin. The sky was still dusky, the forest air sharp and cold. Luke led the group, nose low, stride steady. Noah walked beside him. Mike and Evelyn stayed in the middle, and Elliot followed, gripping his old pistol, eyes no longer tired but resolute. They followed a forgotten patrol route once used by Elliot during his days as sheriff. Along the way, Luke occasionally diverted onto side trails, steering them away from compromised ranger stations. No one spoke, but everyone understood. Luke was navigating not just terrain, but trust. By midday, they reached the border between the national forest and the northern suburbs. From there, it was nearly 20 kilometers to the FBI's regional office, where Agent Julian Greer, a man Elliot had once saved, waited. "We split into 2 groups," Noah said. "Luke and I will take the main road to be the decoy. Mike and Evelyn take the east trail. Elliot goes with them." "You shouldn't go alone," Evelyn protested. "I'm not alone," Noah said quietly, resting a hand on Luke's head. "I've got the best partner in the world." Luke looked up at him, eyes burning with awareness, as if he understood the stakes. At 2:15 p.m., Noah and Luke appeared at a gas station near town, deliberately letting themselves be seen by the surveillance cameras. Just as expected, 10 minutes later, a gray SUV began tailing them. Meanwhile, the others moved through the east trail toward Cedar Creek, where the FBI field office stood. Mike carried the hard drive in his pack. Elliot held a handwritten letter to his final statement, in case he didn't make it. As dusk settled, Noah turned off the main road near the lake. Luke sat in the passenger seat, eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. When the SUV accelerated, Luke started to whimper short, sharp sounds. A warning. "I know," Noah murmured. "They're coming." The SUV pulled up fast. A sharp noise followed a weapon racking. Before a shot could land, Noah swerved hard, driving into a dirt path, tires digging deep into the ground. Luke jumped out first, growling low. 3 men rushed from the SUV. One held a stun baton. Another had a gun. Noah ducked behind the vehicle and returned fire. Luke circled behind a thicket, then launched. He clamped onto the gunman's arm, toppling him. Noah fired again, downing the second man. The last attacker turned and fled when he saw Luke charging, silent and focused, eyes blazing. "That's enough, Luke," Noah called. Luke returned, uninjured, though his pale gray coat was streaked with dirt and blood. When they made it back to town, the others had arrived. The evidence had been delivered to Agent Greer. Within 2 hours, copies were secured in Washington. As night fell, they gathered in a small room beside the local sheriff's station. No more running, no more fear. Luke lay at the center of the circle. His eyes closed, breathing slowly. At last, he slept. And in that quiet, Noah looked up at the sky and whispered, "Day's almost here, Luke. And we're still standing." 3 days after the evidence was delivered to the FBI, the city of Riverside trembled. The news spread like wildfire. Familiar names flashed across morning headlines. Deputy Mayor Warren Kessler arrested for collusion with a narcotics trafficking and money laundering network. 3 senior officers, 1 judge, and 2 businessmen turned themselves in one by one. And at the center of the storm was not a politician. Not a journalist, but a dog named Luke. The town hall was packed that day. Reporters from across the state crowded in. On the modest stage, next to the American flag and the city seal, Elliot Granger sat upright. His suit was plain, and fatigue showed on his face, but his eyes after everything burned clear. "Before I speak of evidence," he began, "I want to tell you about a dog." The room fell silent. Luke sat by Noah's feet in the front row. A blue bandana, the very one that had led them to Mike, was tied around his neck. Luke's gaze wasn't on cameras or reporters. It was on his people. "Luke was once a K-9 unit," Elliot continued. He was injured during a chase and was deemed unfit for service, but I brought him home. And from that moment, he wasn't just a partner, he was my second pair of eyes, the one who kept me grounded, when the truth around me started to bend. He recounted the investigation, the data Linda had sent, the intricate web Kessler had controlled. But he paused often, and each time, his eyes found Luke. He's the one who realized I wasn't dead. He reignited hope, not with a bark, but by refusing to leave my side when everything else had given up. The first round of applause came when Elliot finished. But the louder, longer ovation followed when Luke was invited on stage beside Noah. The event host, speaking for the acting mayor, declared, "For acts of bravery, loyalty, and pivotal contribution to a landmark case, Luke, the German Shepherd, is awarded the Medal of Civilian Honor for the first time in our city's history." Luke didn't know what a medal was, but when Noah knelt to fasten the silver medallion around his neck, Luke touched his nose to the man's hand, then turned, walked to Elliot, and sat beside him. The entire room rose to its feet. That afternoon, while the media still swarmed City Hall, the four Noah, Elliot, Evelyn, and Mike quietly returned to the cabin in the woods. Luke lay in the back seat, his head resting against the door, eyes half closed, as if sleep might finally soften the weight of what they'd endured. They lit a small fire in the yard and shared a simple meal. Mike cracked open a soda. Evelyn pulled out an old photo of Luke, Elliot, and a group of kids from a therapy dog training program. "He deserves his own book," Evelyn smiled. "He doesn't need one," Noah replied hoarsely. "He just needs to be believed." Elliot looked to the horizon, where the sun slipped behind the ridgeline. "He saved me," he said. "Not once, but in moments I didn't even know I was lost." Noah said nothing. He pulled from his pocket a crumpled note, the first one Elliot had given him the day Luke came home. The ink had faded, but the words remained. "If I ever lose my way, let him bring me back." And he had, not just for Elliot, but for all of them. Night fell. The moon was bright. Luke lay beside the fire, eyes closed, nose twitching to the wind. No one spoke. Yet in the silence, something felt complete. A soldier who had fallen. A dog once discarded. A trust long faded. And through Luke, all of it returned. Not loudly, not grandly, just once when a dog believed in you, even when you no longer believed in yourself. That morning, the first sunlight slipped through a thin veil of clouds over Riverside, like a soft ribbon. After all the chaos, chases, and sacrifices, the city could finally breathe again, not in celebration, but in silence. On the porch of a wooden cabin at the edge of the forest, Luke lay with his head resting gently on his front paws, eyes half closed. The wound on his shoulder had healed, though the fur hadn't fully grown back. He didn't care. For Luke, just lying here beside the one he trusted was the greatest reward. Noah stepped outside, a cup of coffee in hand and a soft, earth-toned sweater draped over his shoulders. He gently placed his hand on Luke's head. "Beautiful morning, huh? You feel it too?" Luke opened his eyes. A quick glance, then a quiet blink. But when Noah bent down, the dog lifted his head and brushed it softly against his knee as if to whisper back, "I'm still here." On the small wooden table by the porch sat a simple square box, quietly waiting. Evelyn had dropped it off the night before. "A small gift for a big hero," she'd said. Noah opened the box. Inside was a deep blue wrist scarf, hand-stitched with silver thread. Still standing, still watching. He tied it around Luke's neck. The dog tilted his head slightly, as if he could sense something important, but said nothing. In the morning light, the scarf fluttered lightly, and Luke's pale gray coat glowed more than ever. Let's go for a ride, Noah said, unlocking the car door. Luke didn't hesitate. He leaped into the back seat as if he'd already guessed the destination. They drove west, toward a small cemetery nestled under rows of red maple trees. There, beneath the shade of an old tree, stood a stone marked with the name Logan Halith, first soldier who had trained Luke, and the one who never made it home. Noah laid down a bouquet of white flowers by the grave. Luke stepped forward. No barking, no howling. He simply sat, gently placing a paw on the cool stone. He believed you'd become more than just a working dog, Noah said quietly. And today you proved him right. Luke said nothing, but he lifted his head, eyes focused into the stillness beyond the grave as if seeing something only dogs can see. By the time they returned to the cabin, the day was leaning into dusk. Evelyn, Mike, and Elliot were already there, waiting. A large framed photo stood by the fire pit. Luke in front of City Hall, metal gleaming on his chest, his eyes still turned toward the empty audience seats. "We're putting this up at the precinct," Mike said, "but I think one should stay here too." Elliot smiled softly. "Not for praise, but to remind us of one thing. There are beings who don't need to speak, to change our whole lives." That night, after everyone had gone, Noah and Luke sat on the porch. The night was quiet. The breeze was gentle. The fireplace inside had long gone cold, but a warmer fire flickered gently inside them still. Noah reached into his pocket and pulled out an old scrap of paper, Elliot's handwriting. "If I'm ever lost, let him guide me home." He read it silently, then folded it again. But this time, he didn't put it away. He placed it beside Luke. "And if one day," Noah said, "you're the one who's lost, I'll be the one to guide you back." Luke didn't look up. He just leaned in, resting his head in Noah's lap, eyes closed. And that night, beneath the rustle of fallen leaves and a rare moment of peace, promise was made. No words, no ceremony, just a look, a resting head, a silent whisper, a promise not just from a man, but from a dog, too. Riverside, 1 week after the bank standoff. The endless rain had finally given way to early sunlight. The soft morning light streamed through the fogged windows of the small wooden cabin tucked at the forest's edge, where Luke and Noah had taken refuge since Elliot entered witness protection. No more sirens, no phones ringing in the middle of the night. But the quiet didn't feel like peace. Not to Noah. Luke had changed, not with wounds or scars, but in a quieter, more absolute way. He no longer slept at the foot of the bed. Instead, every night, he lay on the wooden floor right beside Noah's headboard, eyes open, ears alert, like he was guarding something, not a city, a person. Noah didn't say a word about it, but he knew. Every time he jolted awake in the night, sweat clinging to his back, the first thing he'd see was always the same. Luke's warm brown eyes, watching silently. No blame, no questions, no invasion, just presence. Mira returned on Thursday morning, carrying a bag of cinnamon waffles and an old leather army folder. She had once been a military vet, but her gaze spoke of someone who had healed many more humans than dogs. "How's Luke?" she asked, spotting the dog pressed against Noah's leg, unmoving. "He hasn't left my side," Noah said softly. "I think he sees something I don't." Mira nodded. "He sees it clearly. PTSD isn't just for people. Luke was a war dog. He knows. He's protecting you because you haven't learned to protect yourself yet." Noah smiled, faintly, for the first time in days. "I thought I was past it, that we'd won." "You survived. But survival doesn't always mean peace." She placed the folder on the table. "I brought something. Logan sent it to our unit before he went missing. They held on to it, unsure who to send it to. I think you should read it. That night, when only red embers glowed in the fireplace, Noah opened the folder. Inside was an old photo Logan in uniform, cradling a young Luke, his eyes bright with hope, and a slip of paper, the ink blurred in places, handwritten, bold. If I don't make it back, bring Luke somewhere he can believe in a human. Not everyone deserves it, but one person is enough. Noah froze. The photo slipped from his fingers and landed face down on the floor. Luke stepped forward, slowly. He rested his head on Noah's knee. No barking. I never thought I deserved him, Noah whispered. I was just a broken piece that fell out of the team. Without Logan, I was nobody. Luke let out a soft whine. It wasn't noisy. It was a sigh deep, round, and heavier than any words. At dawn, Noah woke while the world was still cloaked in mist. Luke wasn't at his usual spot. He found the dog standing still before a long, unused wooden door, the one leading to the forest trail, where Logan had once taught him his first command. Luke didn't move, didn't signal, just stood there. Noah approached, laying a hand on his shoulder. You remember? Luke turned to look at him. And in that moment, Noah understood it wasn't that Luke was calling him out. He was asking if Noah was ready to go back. They walked the whole morning, through the pines, across the shallow creek. Luke led the way, steady as ever. But today, it didn't feel like a mission. He was simply guiding Noah home, to the old wooden house where Logan once lived. The place had long been abandoned, cloaked in time's dust, but it didn't feel cold. Luke ran in circles, rubbing his head against the corners like he was remembering, like he was breathing in something lost. Noah opened the door. Damp wood, memories that never had names. He stepped inside. And there, on the bookshelf, tucked into a worn-out notebook, was a slip of paper. No name, just one line. If you're reading this, it means Luke trusts you. Noah collapsed into a chair. Luke lay down at his feet, resting his head against Logan's old boot still left by the fireplace. The sunset poured in like a soft whisper. On the porch, Mira arrived with a warm coffee and an invitation to reopen Haven 9, the therapy center for both humans and dogs who had served. Noah didn't answer right away. He just looked at Luke, who slowly stretched out in front of the cabin, exhaled, and slept. For the first time in a long while, not watching, not guarding, no fear. Noah said quietly, maybe to Mira, maybe to himself, maybe. He knows I'll be okay. Mira nodded. He always knew, long before you did. Noah closed his eyes, listening to Luke's steady breath. No sirens, no radio chatter, no noise, just the gentle wind under the eaves and the rhythm of a creature who had crossed with him the fragile edge between life and death, trust and doubt. He didn't sleep for 5 nights, Mira whispered. When Logan died, Luke stayed by the supply room door, waiting for someone who never came back. Noah turned to her, eyes meeting hers. And now? He asked. She smiled. Now he sleeps, because he knows this person won't leave. They sat like that for a long while. No words needed. When night fell, Luke woke. He stretched, then gently placed his head on Noah's lap again. Noah said nothing. He just ran a hand down Luke's back, slow, steady, and full of gratitude. I don't know how much you understand, he whispered, but if you ever need someone to believe in again, I'm still here, just like you were for me. Outside, the stars began to show. And in that moment, with no sound and no declaration, a promise was spoken. Not with words, but through a look, a presence between a man and his dog. A promise that would never be broken. The rain from the night before left streaks across the cabin roof like fingerprints from time itself. Dawn had yet to fully arrive, but Luke was already awake, lying on the rug, head resting against the chair, eyes quietly fixed on the door. Noah was still asleep. No tossing, no gasping. No calling names into the night is a rare relief since the bank raid. But Luke hadn't moved. He stayed there, a silent night watchman, asking nothing in return. Mira stepped in with a notebook and an old voice recording. She sat beside Luke, placing a gentle hand on his back. "Let's try something different," she whispered. "No pills. No therapy, just memory." Noah stirred at the sound of clicks. Mira sat by the fireplace, starting a small recorder, one used in K-9 training. A familiar voice Luke'd. "Luke, sit, left side, right side, behind." Noah frowned. "That's Logan's voice," Mira said softly. Luke lifted his head the moment the voice came on. Not startled, not confused, but like something buried had stirred quietly awake. Noah looked at him. Luke's eyes weren't focused on the speaker. They were looking somewhere else, as if hearing a voice from a place no longer here. That night, Noah dreamed. Not the usual nightmares. No explosions, no blood, no Luke crying out in rubble. Just a long corridor bathed in mist, and a soldier's silhouette walking ahead, uniform faded, left shoulder lowered from an old wound. "Logan," he called. The figure didn't turn, but a voice Luke'd not from lips, but from the walls, the floor, the scars on memory. "If I don't come back?" Noah followed. "Don't let him keep standing guard forever." The hallway vanished. He woke, soaked in sweat, eyes wide open. Luke sat beside him, still and silent. His eyes, Noah had never seen them like that. Not the eyes of a dog, but of someone keeping a promise. "Do you know where Luke is taking you?" Mira asked the next morning as they stood at the forest's edge. Noah shook his head. "He's not running, he's leading, just like Logan did." "You're remembering, Noah. Don't be afraid of it." Luke walked ahead, moss-covered paths under his paws, steady, unrushed, every step measured, every turn remembered. He led them to a place Noah had long forgotten. A high clearing marked by weathered posts where Logan's team once trained. The tents were gone. The flags had faded. But Luke remembered each corner, each patch of grass. He stopped. Dug not wildly, but with precision, then scratched at a spot beneath a flat rock. Noah knelt. A rusted tin box, dented but intact. Inside, a cassette tape, a military ID, and a note. Logan's voice, dim under a crack of thunder. "Luke, you know I'm not coming back, but you know who to find. I trust your instinct more than anything." Noah stood frozen. Mira touched his shoulder. Luke sat, eyes fixed on the last line. "The person you find will need you more than anyone." That afternoon, back at the cabin, Noah said nothing. He placed the tin box on the shelf beside nameless relics. A worn collar, a team photo, a torn piece of Logan's jacket, one big enough to be called memory, but too heavy to forget. "What are you thinking?" Mira asked. "I think I've been that person all along, just never dared to admit it." "And now?" Noah looked down at Luke, resting his head on Noah's foot. "Now I'll learn how to let him stop standing guard." Before bed, Mira handed him a notebook and pen. "Write down the dream, even just a sentence. Logan did it every night. Maybe it'll help." Noah didn't reply, but before turning off the light, he wrote, "I saw him walk ahead, but Luke looked back." That night, Luke slept deeply, not by the door, not listening. not stirring when Noah moved. He just slept. And for the first time, they both did. Outside, the cold crept in. Wind slipped through pine needles, but inside the cabin the fire still burned. On the floor, a German shepherd lay curled on an old soldier's coat, not for memory, but for promise. Near dawn, Noah woke from the chill pressing in along the floor. Luke wasn't at his usual spot. When he stepped outside, he found him standing on the open lawn, where Mira had once set up a makeshift therapy tent. Luke was looking up. The sky was still dark, but in his deep brown eyes, there was a light that felt unmistakably real. Noah walked over, sat beside him. No words. Luke quietly sat too, resting his head on Noah's knee, like in the old days. No command, no leash, no witness needed. They had crossed so much, but right now just sitting together in silence was victory enough. And in the sleep that followed, Noah saw Logan once more. This time he nodded, then turned away, at peace. The morning sky over Riverside was veiled in a silvery mist, as if someone had redrawn the world in soft strokes of memory. Wooden chairs lined the grass on both sides. An American flag lay neatly folded on the podium ahead. Beneath the roof of the Veterans Memorial, a small group sat in quiet anticipation, not for ceremony, but for something deeper. Gratitude. Noah sat in the second row beside Mira. Luke lay close to his feet, head resting on a boot, just like he had throughout the journey. He didn't move, but his eyes stayed fixed on the photo placed at the podium. Logan Hale, in field uniform, one arm raised high beside a young Luke, his gaze alive with purpose. Mira held a sealed envelope tightly. Inside it was a notebook returned by the command unit Logan's journal from the final 3 months before he disappeared. She hadn't opened it. Not from fear, but because she wasn't ready. Elliot was the first to speak. He wore no uniform, just a plain blue shirt and a steady voice. "We're not here to say goodbye," he began, "but to recognize that some people and some things stay with us even when we can't see them anymore." He turned toward Luke. "This dog once guarded a man until his last breath, and then he kept guarding another soul until that person could stand again. Not because he was trained to, but because he never forgot." The applause wasn't loud, but it was enough for Luke to raise his head. He looked at Elliot, then shifted his gaze to Logan's photo, as if to confirm what had just been said. After the ceremony, once most guests had gone, only a few remained near the memorial. Mira opened the envelope, taking out the weathered journal. The cover was worn, the edges curled. The first page held only 2 lines. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back. And if that's the case, keep living." Mira didn't cry. She closed the book softly, holding it to her chest. Then she turned to Luke, knelt down and whispered, "He didn't leave me any more instructions, but I believe he left you with the right person." Noah stepped forward. In his hand was a restored military collar, salvaged from old gear. The inscription read, "Sergeant Logan Hale, K9 Luke, Unit 9, Sand Ridge." He sat beside Luke. The dog didn't move, only tilted his head slightly. Noah gently fastened the collar around Luke's neck. No grand speech, no pledge, just one deliberate motion, calm and certain, as if to say, "You've made it home, and you still belong here." That afternoon, the 3 returned to the cabin. Mira brewed ginger tea. Noah lit the fire. Luke lay by the doorway, right where Logan used to drop his pack after every training run. No one told him to lie there. No one called him. But as if loyalty had built a map inside him, Luke always knew his place. "I'm staying tomorrow," Mira said. Noah looked up. "Not to run away," she added, "but because I think if Logan left Luke behind, Then maybe the rest of him deserves to be rooted here too. She pulled a small pouch from her bag. Seeds. The kind Logan once dreamed of planting around the cabin. No one lives forever, Mira said quietly. But if something green can grow from a life that's gone, why not let it? Noah didn't speak. He simply knelt beside her, helping dig a small hole by the porch. Luke watched silently. No growling and tension, just one paw resting on the fresh earth as if to seal it. When the sun began to set, its golden hue bathed the cabin. Noah opened the notebook, where Mira had transcribed the last journal entry Logan ever wrote. I don't know when I'll make it back, but if I don't just hope Luke finds someone who can look at the scars and not look away. Noah turned to Luke, curled at the doorway. The firelight danced in his eyes, reflecting not a dog, but a memory still breathing. You're the one who stayed, Noah whispered. Not just for Logan, but for me too. The next morning the sunlight was gentle. Mira sat on the porch, flipping through Logan's final pages. Not just mission logs, but scattered thoughts. The smell of morning coffee, the sound of Luke's paws on sand, the quiet wondering if he didn't make it back. Who would care for Luke? The last page had no writing. Just a faint stain, maybe a watermark. Mira pressed her hand to it, then closed the book. He never left a page unfinished, she told Noah. I think he knew someone would finish it someday. Noah said nothing. He rose and walked to where Luke lay near the steps. Sitting beside him, he placed a hand gently on his neck. Tomorrow we start again. Not to forget Logan, but to live. The way he hoped we would. Luke let out a low whine, not of sorrow, but of agreement. That afternoon, the three of them cleaned out the old storage cabin behind the rescue center. It had once held Logan's gear. Now, it became a place to hold memories. A team photo, Logan's nameplate, the final campaign map. On the front door, Mira hung a small wooden sign. Those who stay are not left behind. They're strong enough to carry the memory forward. When she stepped outside, Luke was already waiting on the porch. No one told him to be there. Don't even had to. Riverside entered its first month of spring. The snow melted slowly across the hills, revealing pale grass and patches of drying mud. But in Luke's eyes, nothing looked messy. He stood tall, ears perked in the soft light, as if he was listening to something far away. Not a sound, but a calling. He walked toward the porch, where Noah was refitting the wooden frame of the door. One of his hands was bandaged from an old injury from his unit days, still aching when the weather changed. We've finished clearing the last space, Noah said without turning. Are you good with that? Luke didn't reply. He stepped closer and rested his head gently against Noah's side. Just a touch. Enough for Noah to pause. Yeah, I know, he smiled. I hear it too, just like you. That day they arrived at Haven 9th Therapy Center, newly reopened, carrying Logan's legacy. Mira cut the ribbon with an old military knife Logan once kept in his chest pocket. She didn't make a speech, just said one line to the small crowd gathered below. Some scars don't need to be hidden. They're proof we survived. Behind her, a wooden sign read, Haven 9, where trust returns. Luke wore his old unit collar for the opening. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a bridge, between two soldiers, one alive, one gone, and a dog who had never left his post. The ceremony ended in silence. No loud applause, no slogans, just quiet glances exchanged between those who had lost, who had fallen, now quietly smiling because they saw Luke, and in him, a piece of themselves. 1 month later, the morning light returned. Noah walked with Luke through the small forest behind the cabin. The seeds Mira had planted were beginning to sprout barley green, but persistent. Luke walked slower than usual, not out of fatigue, but to match the rhythm. No one spoke. They just walked like before, like they always would. In a clearing, Noah stopped. Ahead stood a simple stone marker. No name, no photo. Just one line etched into it. If I don't make it back, live better than I did. Logan. Noah knelt and placed a pine branch on the stone. Luke didn't bark. He sat, eyes locked on the inscription. Still, no command needed. We did it, you know, Noah said. Luke brought me back, then pushed me forward. A breeze passed through the forest. A dry leaf spun once before touching the ground. In the soft soil, Luke's fresh paw print overlapped an older one. No one knew whose it was, but both were kept. That evening, all three sat outside the cabin. The fireplace glowed warm. Mira wrote in the final page of Logan's journal. Today, Luke smiled, not with his mouth, but through his eyes. And that was the truest light I've ever seen. Noah handed her a cup of tea, then turned to Luke. You were a soldier, then a keeper of promises, and now, a guardian of dreams for those left behind. Luke let out a quiet sound. He stood and walked onto the porch. The moonlight glinted off a small scar near his back leg, the one Logan had once treated, though it never quite disappeared. Mira whispered, That scar doesn't need to heal. Noah nodded. It reminds us that we were once hurt, and still stayed. They didn't try to erase the memories. They learned to live with them and let them shine their own way. Near dawn, Luke woke them with a soft scratch at the door. He didn't panic. He didn't whine. He just stood there, staring into the woods. They stepped outside together. The air was strangely clear. A glow broke over the horizon, spilling from behind the mountains, bathing the cabin, the trees, the porch. And Luke. He stood in that first light, eyes closed, ears listening. No one knew what he was thinking, but everyone knew it was beautiful. A promise never spoken. Noah stepped forward, placed a hand on Luke's neck. Thank you, he said, for never giving up, and for staying till the end. Mira pulled out her phone, capturing the moment. This photo isn't for posting, she said. It's for later. When someone asks, I'll say, there was once a dog who kept watch over a whole lost generation. That same evening, a young boy arrived at the center, led by his mother. He'd just survived a fire and hadn't spoken since. Luke was brought out with no collar, no leash. He walked slowly, step by step, toward the boy sitting with his knees hugged to his chest. No barking, just presence. And a look. The boy reached out, touched Luke's head, and for the first time in weeks, he whispered one word. Friend. Noah stood behind the glass, silent. Mira gently touched his shoulder. I think, she said, Logan just smiled. Luke lay down beside the boy and didn't move, not out of duty, but because once, in the farthest corner of a dream, he had made a promise. If I'm not allowed to return, let me stay in the light of those who are saved. And just like that new day began, not with miracles, but with a very real light from a dog named Luke. Sometimes the ones who can't speak end up saying the most. Luke didn't just bark at a coffin, he barked at a lie. And through his loyalty, he exposed the truth when no one else dared to look deeper. If you've ever been doubted, betrayed, or blamed without proof, know that you're not alone. It hurts to be questioned when your heart is honest. But like Noah, you have the power to stay calm, document what matters, and hold your ground. Truth may take time, but it has a way of rising, especially when someone or something refuses to stop believing in you. If you're facing suspicion or false accusations, take small, steady steps. Protect your peace. Gather facts, not fights. Seek support from those who see your worth, whether it's a trusted friend, a therapist, or even a dog who never looks away when you're hurting. And if children are involved, let your strength become their calm. Because loyalty isn't always loud. Sometimes it just sits beside you and stays. Now we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been accused unfairly, suspected someone you loved, or had to rebuild trust from the ground up? Share your story in the comments. Let someone out there know they're not the only one, because healing starts when we're seen. So what would your lucky do?